We all are here to stand with the families, just to give a tribute, do the prayers for the people who lost their lives.
On Monday night, Montrealers marked the National Day of Remembrance for Victims of Terrorism with a tribute to the 329 people who died in the Air India Flight 182 bombing 40 years ago. 268 of them were Canadians. It was one of the worst terrorist attacks in Canadian history.
We are all being together as a community and grieving for those which died on the Air India crash. I have a friend and I have one student also. I was teaching that time dances, and both mother and daughter, they both died. So sometimes I miss them. And today is the day, like we all remember them.
A memorial was held at the Air India Memorial site on Monk Island along the Lachine Canal. Built by the victims' families, the site stands as a place of remembrance and a call for peace. The ceremony was coordinated by Canadian Indian organizations in Quebec. One of the voices keeping the memory of those who died alive is 88-year-old Mahesh Sharma, a Concordia University professor. He lost 4 members of his family in the bombing: his wife, their 2 daughters, and his mother-in-law. The family was heading to India for a summer vacation when their lives were cut short.
It was very hard for me to take, first of all, but when I realized that I'm sure I can earn some money and put their names there and do something better for the people. मैंने सबके नाम पे scholarship कर दिया है. I have put scholarship in name of everybody in McGill and Concordia.
As Montreal gathered to reflect, the message was clear. They will never forget those lost and will continue to stand together for justice, peace. In Montreal, Adriana Gentile.
Montreal's Indian community gathered this evening to mark 40 years since Canada's worst ever terrorist attack. The bombing of an Air India flight that killed all 329 people on board, most of the victims Canadian. The solemn ceremony took place on the shores of the Lachine Canal in front of a memorial plaque that bears the names of the victims. Friends and family spread flower petals and said prayers to honor their loved ones. Many say 40 years later, their wounds have never healed. Mahesh Sharma lost his wife, mother-in-law, and 2 children, and Prakesh Sahu lost his father in the bombing.
Oh no, you will never. You know how to compromise with time. Otherwise, you will never. You remember them every day. It just happened yesterday, like that.
It was very hard. It's still hard now. What can I say? I mean, it's been 40 years, but the pain is still there. Like the wound has not healed. Sure, I mean, time heals everything, but it's not so easy. It's not so easy at all.
It was 40 years ago on a Sunday morning. I heard on the radio an Air India flight from Montreal exploded. There were no survivors.
The bomb blew the plane apart.
Everyone from Montreal's Indian community who was old enough to remember the crash has that day seared in their memory. It's safe to say almost everyone in the community knew someone on Flight 182. I was a teenager and I recall my mother worrying, wondering whether it was a family friend whom I called uncle, whether he and his little girl, who must have been 7 or 8 at the time, whether they were on that plane. The 40th anniversary of that day is June 23rd, but decades later, the wounds still haven't healed.
I was supposed to suffer.
88-year-old Mahesh Sharma snapped this photo at Mirabel Airport 40 years ago. It was a good thing the retired Concordia teacher did.
And those pictures helped to identify the body. These are the clothes of my daughter.
The family he lost, their names now forever etched in this Montreal memorial.
My mother-in-law, my wife, and 2 daughters.
Air India Flight 182 blew up over the Atlantic Ocean, killing all 329 on board. Most were Canadians. More than 100 boarded that plane from Mirabel Airport. What went through your mind then?
I don't know. I think I collapsed.
My whole life is here.
It was the worst terrorist attack in Canada's history, but few Canadians can recall the details. An Angus Reid 2023 survey found 9 out of 10 Canadians polled had little to no knowledge of the incident.
I don't know why, because it was the biggest tragedy in the history of aviation history of Canada.
The distinction of the world's worst terror-related air disaster was held for decades until planes hit the Twin Towers in New York.
It's very sad, very sad.
One person did do prison time for perjury and for making the bombs, but 40 years later, no other convictions for the murders of all these victims. This memorial was unveiled after a lengthy and complicated inquiry suggesting Sikh extremists were behind the attack. And it took 25 years for the Air India report to come out, citing blunders on the part of Canadian authorities, accusing them of failing to prevent the tragedy.
A cascading series of errors.
Errors like erased wiretaps, a failure to protect threatened witnesses, and leads that weren't followed up.
That if there was a plane with most of white people, would have got different.
Ottawa has apologized. The political tensions leading up to the attack still exist today. It's complicated, traumatizing, and triggering for communities in so many ways. But in the end, they all want justice. People of all faiths were on that plane.
My mom, she was a practicing Sikh. I'm like sitting on both sides of this.
This is a photo of Isha Marjara's sister's high school graduation, taken the day before she and her mom boarded Flight 182.
We didn't even hug. We just, stuck our tongues out at each other and, and off they went.
Many of the Montreal families who lost loved ones have moved away. Sharma takes part in every memorial. Keeping his family's memory alive through scholarships has kept him going.
I'm going to leave their name behind forever.